What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're out here at Crossbar Offroad Park, and that's because we're gonna do some testing on the JK. A few videos back, we redid the rear suspension, raised up the lower control arms, and we're gonna take it out, have some fun, and see how the Jeep handles in the rocks and at some speed.
Ben, you gotta back up. We're going up. Well, between cheating and ground clearance, I think you're good.
So a few things that's happening here. We're running sticky tires. The Aturo, the green labels have been phenomenal. They just stick to everything. And then what we've done to the suspension is actually raise both the frame side and the axle side lower control arm brackets. So we've gained a bunch of ground clearance, and also by doing that, we've actually reduced our anti-squat, which is phenomenal in regards to crawling. When you get on the gas, the rear doesn't jack up. We'll talk about that later. First things first, we're gonna continue to try to find some trails that'll really put this Jeep to the challenge. This obstacle is called Screen Door. I mean, you can see how big this ledge is. Down here, it's wet mud, so our tires have to get watery. We got a step ledge here, followed by another one, which is, it's the perfect wheelbase catcher for 4 doors. Not only is it wet, we have the ledges. It's a good climb.
Can you let it eat right there?
That about sums it up. Wet. That was a hard climb, I'm not gonna lie. So here's a prime example of a spot where it's, you know, worth having your shocks and control arms out of the way. So earlier I mentioned the control arms. I didn't mention the shocks, but I have a full video of how we raise these both on the lower and the upper right there. So you can tell it's flush with the axle tube. And at this point, we wouldn't even hit that. We'd bottom out on the diff. And I'm curious to see if we'll actually make it up this, but pretty sure we will. Now on the control arm side, once again, these were normally way down here and on the bottom of the axle tube. So in this spot right here, we're not close to hitting this. We would actually belly out on the fuel tank skid before we hit our control arms. But I mean, this has definitely been an amazing upgrade so far. Just, you know, it's an actual functional off-road upgrade. It's a night and day difference when you start going off-roading with your shocks and everything flush with the axle tube, because you're not slamming into anything. I haven't hit one thing yet with them, so. Like a
hose clamp, like jingling.
It's something jingling.
Yeah.
The noise was just a loose skid plate bolt and nut, but it was rattling around like it was something broken. So. so you guys could see. Oh, there we go. Now the point of this video is not to show you guys how fast the Jeep can go off-road, but more so to show you guys how stable it is. Even without like a triangulated 4-link, it's a 3-link front and rear. But with the anti-squat, whenever you get those values right, the right shocks, all of that, it just is a very stable, good performing platform. Sorry, I'm trying to drive and think. And this Jeep is just soaking up everything. It's doing a phenomenal job, and it's not even a race Jeep. It's very hard to do all this one-handed.
Yesterday was a blast on the trail. The Jeep just did phenomenal, thrashing this thing throughout the park, and it held up. And there was no point in which the Jeep felt out of control or I felt uncomfortable. So, you know, there's a lot to it if you want to go beat on a Jeep like that. You know, besides the HEMI, you know, we've got the 1-tons, the ball joint deletes, the stickies, the bead locks, the suspension that can actually, you know, handle all of those big impacts, the 3-link, all of the bracketry, all of that goes together on building a kind of, not unbreakable, but a rig that can stand something like that. So I was highly impressed. We were originally gonna do you know, a little more wheeling, but on the way out to Crossbar, Mike's lift pump went out on his truck. So we did a little lift pump replacement on the side of I-40. Then we had to go put some hydro assist steering in the recovery Jeep for the ranch. And that left us with like an hour and a half of wheeling. So we made the best of it and, you know, kind of hit as many trails as we could. But it was a lot of fun and, you know, really testing the Jeep like that. This video is a little bit different. I'm trying to get back into just making more consistent videos for you guys. So, you know, this is a little bit different. We went out and had some fun. But one thing I do want to talk about here at the end of the video is anti-squat. I've mentioned it throughout the channel multiple times and I've never really went into it. And I will say, if you're looking for a much better full-length video, I'll put a link in the video description to Jake Berkey. He made a video couple years ago and it's very, very good if you're actually trying to learn. Now on the JK platform, there's only so many things we can change without making this thing a full buggy. So don't worry too much about anti-squat values. All of this is just general knowledge, and in the end, there's only so many things you can do. Anti-squat, what is it? So the rear end, when you smash the gas, does it stay level? Does it dip down or does it rise up? That is anti-squat. 100% anti-squat is gonna stay it's gonna stay planted. You smash the gas, the rear end doesn't do either. Above 100%, the rear end's gonna jack up. Under 100%, you're actually gonna have a little bit of dive where it kind of dips down in. Now there's a lot of different scenarios in which you would want that, anti-squat or have some squat. You know, if you're a rock bouncer or somebody that's going up a really steep incline, if you hit the throttle, you might want that back end to rise up so you don't flip back. But on the flip side of that, if your anti-squat's too high and you gas it and your back end, you know, raises up, there's only so much your shocks can do to really prevent it just being a horrible rough ride. Whereas if it dips down a little bit, your shocks can get into the action, you might get a little more traction. But here we have a few examples of how your anti-squat could be changed. So here's an example of just a standard lifted JK. Here we have the tire, we have our axle here, and you know, a lifted JK with adjustable control arms. We have our upper link on the axle there and our lower link down here, and our frame side up there. Now, once we hit the gas, our axle is gonna wanna twist up clockwise. And what's gonna happen is this upper link is gonna kinda wanna pivot. And since it's lower, this one is also gonna wanna push up. And if you can imagine that torsional force twisting it, it's going to wanna raise these links and transfer a lot of that energy up into the frame and body and raise it up. And that's not exactly what we want. We can actually, you know, make this a little more flat, bring our upper down a little bit. So when we get that torsional twist, this is kind of counteracting each other, and this little bit isn't gonna do too much. So there is an actual way to calculate all this. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. We have to find our center of gravity on the vehicle, have an imaginary line that goes across. Then we have our 100% anti-squat line from our rear axle up to the front axle where it meets our center of gravity. That's gonna be our 100% anti-squat line. Now, if we continued to draw our links out like we did there, we're gonna find the point where they intersect, which in this case is down here, which is below our 100% anti-squat line, which means this might be around 80% anti-squat, and this setup would dip down a little bit. So on a lifted JK, without long arms, nothing done to it, just adjustable control arms, you can see how high our anti-squat would be. Our center of gravity is usually right around the transmission bell housing area, so we have that imaginary line there, and then we have our 100% anti-squat line going up to our center of gravity and the wheelbase. And if we draw our factory links going up, that's way up there. So that is a huge amount of anti-squat. It's gonna be rough. My Jeep was like that at one point. And it's not the end of the world, but it is something to think about if you are going to swap over to a long arm kit. Now the front, it's the exact same way, especially when you're in two-wheel drive, just driving down the street. It's called anti-dive. When you smash the brakes, does the front end climb up or does it dip down? And it's pretty much the same thing, just backwards. And if you are interested on stuff like this and figuring out what the best values are, I'll put some info in the video description. Definitely check out Jake Berkey's video and download the Excel calculator where you can actually put in numbers of your Jeep. You can measure everything to see what your suspension values are, and that's how you kind of design your suspension. I think one of these days we'll make a video on how to actually put those numbers in the Excel calculator. Not really explaining what everything is, but hey, if you have your Jeep, we're gonna take measurements in these spots and plug them into the Excel formula and see what our suspension geometry looks like. So to kind of bring all of that back together, where I was going with it is, when we moved the control arms up, we actually reduced our anti-squat a little bit. Now we do have to be careful on doing that, raising our brackets up. We need to make sure our upper link has enough separation between the upper mount and the lower on the axle. Generally around 10 inches is enough. So make sure you at least have 10 inches. It's a quarter of your tire size. So if you're running 40s, you're gonna need 10 inches. But that is it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Like always, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for next week's video. I'll see y'all later.